Good morning, everybody. So, very, very hearty welcome to all of you for this session. My name is Abhirambika Ravi Varman. I'm your host for today's session. And I do life and leadership coaching. And what interests me in this is I also work with NGOs and I work in the development sector. And today in this session, aligning with collaborators and adding value in the development sector, we have some amazing people with us, a house full of speakers with various experiences, and I'm going to bring one by one. Good morning, Manjushree, Patil. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm so happy. Yes, so happy to have you with us. When I was just looking at your profile and I was seeing all the things that you're doing, it just brought goosebumps to me because, like we were talking just before we went live. Doing a fellowship at this time and being recognized for the work that you've done, that's a phenomenal thing. So thank you so much. Manjushree Patil is from Aatman Academy, and I'm going to give you, she has a lot of interesting things to share about herself. So I'm going to, leave that as the session progresses for her to share. So that's like a surprise element, for all of you to wait and hear from her. Okay, so our next speaker, thank you, Manjushree. So our next speaker for today is Bharathy Tahiliani. Thank you so much again for joining us. Again, a very, very hearty welcome. You come with, again, fantastic experience. And like I was telling Manjushree, it's so nice to just be around all of you today and just share the stage to hear what and all you have, in terms of your experience that you're going to bring to all of us. So again, thank you very much for joining us. And for, the next two speakers come from the same organization. So it's nice to see them in the same screen. Hi, Joyce, Srinivasan. And hi, Sunayana. So happy to have both of you. I know it, working together and today being in a, in stage, sharing also together must be exciting for all of you, but we are so excited to have you both here with us today. So to, amazing ladies that we have in the morning with us, right? And to moderate the session, we have Mr. L. Prabhakar. Thank you, sir, for joining us again. So I'm just going to leave you all in the stage and the moderator and the speakers. So once again, welcome to the speakers and welcome to all the attendees. Have a great time. Lots to learn, lots to pick up from these great people around here. So I'm off stage now. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhirambika. Thank you to all my fellow panelists. Pleasure connecting with all of you again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to audience. And when the panelists here, we have people across different time zones. Thank you, Manjushree, for making it to this conclave at this point of time where you are in US. What I will do is I'll just set a brief context. And it's a context which will help the audience relate to what we will be engaging in discussing with. So I was just reflecting on the entire space of social sector. One word that sort of I picked up from yesterday, there were two sessions which were also again related to the social sector. And one word that kept coming back was ecosystem. I personally felt ecosystem was little cold word. So I am starting with a word called mosaic. Because I think what we all do in this space is actually create a piece of art, a mosaic. And for that to be created, you actually require a whole lot of painters or artists. Unlike a mosaic where one person does the painting or art, here people will have to come together. It's also different from the way we typically look at art. If I am creating a piece of art, at the end of it, even if you don't understand, I can pass it as modern art. But in the social sector, I don't think we have the luxury of passing it off as a modern art. It has to be an art which creates impact. Wow. And that's how I look at the whole word of mosaic. The second aspect that sort of comes to me when I look at social sector and I'm differentiating with corporate sector where I had been working for almost 34 years and I still am associated with the corporate sector. There are stakeholders in corporate, there are stakeholders even in social sector. But I think a fundamental difference when social sector looks at collaborators or stakeholders, a large part of it is not in their control. When you're in a corporate, when you're in an organization, you're within a boundary with established systems, you have parachutes, all sorts of things are there when you're inside a corporate. But when you're in the social sector, you have to deal with all sorts of challenges and ambiguities. Before I sort of take it forward, let me also make a confession, and probably it's true for some of my fellow panelists also. I have never gone through a formal coaching process. I've never been assigned a formal coach. But I think I've benefited from people who have guided me. And when they've guided me, they've used probably the principles and elements of coaching. When I reflect back on my journey, I think it's the questions that have been asked of me is what has helped me take decisions or move forward. And when I look at the nature of those questions, I find a consistency in terms of the characteristics of the questions that were asked of me. I think the first one is asking a relevant question, a reflective question, and finally a question that resonates with you. I think when this type of questions get asked, it sort of stirs something within you. And then you look forward to either an insight or a hypothesis and then get into an action. I also realized that when we talk of coaching, and this is true for all of us who are in this space, we actually, in a way, get coached by our stakeholders and collaborators. It's a two-way process. And I was just thinking of a very, very small example a few months back. I was in Mysore and engaging with a rural couple. And they were saying that they now sort of do hand wash at home, etc. And I was curious as to what made that behavior change. And you need to ask multiple questions to really get down to the real reason. Finally, the woman said that my daughter, who sort of picked up the whole issue of hand wash and sanitation in the school, one day came and said, if something happens to you, who will take care of us? And that's why please practice hand wash. 2 days back, we were in Assam and we were sort of engaging with some of the school children. And I was curious why there is reluctance to take STEM as a discipline, science as a discipline. And I got a very powerful insight where they said pursuing science is costly and time consuming, because science requires a lot of supplementary inputs which we can't afford because of our background. Until that time, I was going all over the place as to why are they not interested in science. And to me, it was a coaching to design and plan interventions going forward. Some of the people who are in ICF would have heard of Emma Lewis, LC. She is a very famous coach. And to end the context, I will share a quote that she talks of. Coaching works because it helps you connect with what you want and why. And then take action. When you take action, magical things can happen. Today, it's my pleasure and privilege to have 4 panelists who are creating magic in their own way. And it's their magic. When we hear and listen to those magical stories, I'm sure there'll be inspiration for all of us at the end of the day. So with that, what I would request my fellow panelists is to first briefly introduce yourself. And when I'm saying briefly introduce yourself, I would request you to introduce the work that you do and probably share some impact story which will help the audience connect emotionally to the type of difference that you people are making. Once we have done with that introductions, then we will get into how we have gone about aligning collaborators, etc. So maybe Ambika, I'll follow the same sequence that Ambika had done. Manjushree, you could start with.
So, namaste. Good morning to all of you. My name is Manjushree Patil, and I am the founder director of Aatman Academy. It's a customized learning, inclusive, alternative space for children with varied learning challenges that is located in Thane. And Prabhakar, it has been so wonderful. You set the tone. Honestly, I don't feel like talking. I just feel like listening to you, because I'm sitting here with a pencil, because that's the only thing I have right now in front of me. My pen is somewhere else in my bag. And I'm like, I want to write. I don't want to talk. I want to listen to him. But, and suddenly that realization dawned, oh, I'm supposed to be speaking. So it was wonderful. You set the tone and you made some very pertinent remarks about, what this space really means. It's something that we've all come here more because we are a set of people who've got our heart in what we do. And what I would like to personally say is that I'm a mad person because, and I think all of you will agree with me, all of you are my friends because you also are just as mad as I am, because we are here to really make a difference. And that making a difference, for me, one of the earliest stories of impact of the work that I do. So I started this school more out of helplessness, because as a therapist, as a special educator, as a counselor, and then as a principal of an IGCSE school myself, I came to a point where I said, who is going to help these children? Somebody needs to do it. So while I call it a school, it's really an alternative setup right now. It doesn't have a full-fledged status of a school. And one of the first things that I always mentioned to children's parents was that this school is 50% for you. So when I'm talking about a stakeholder, for me, my parents are my very big stakeholders. And the proof of what we were doing came to me, or the realization came to me about a year after we started up. We started up in 2011. Our go live was 2011. 2010, the school was founded. And in 2011, we started. By the end of 2000, that first academic year, a parent came to me and she told me, Madam, आजकल मैं smile करती हूँ. I said, wow, I'm so happy. नहीं रुको, और बताना है मुझे. I said, हाँ बोलो. आपको मालूम है, मैंने अरंगेत्रम किया है, पर मैं मेरा डांसिंग पूरा भूल गई थी. जब से मेरा बेटा आपके स्कूल में आ गया है, तब से मैं इतनी फ्रेश रहती हूँ कि वो अच्छे हाथ में है, और मुझे अंदर से लगने लगा है कि I can now go for my dance classes, and I have joined back my dance. I got goosebumps when she said that. Because I've always said to my parents, this school is 50% for you. There is a quote by a very famous guru, Bhiu nako mi tuja patishi ahe. Don't be worried, I'm there to support you. I'm behind you, don't worry. And that is the feeling that I want to give my parents, that don't worry, we are there, we will brave through this together. And in our school, there is no concept of complaints, there is just a concept of feedback. And we work together. I need to learn from my parents, and I can only survive with their feedback. It's not possible for me to go ahead. So that's one of my most memorable impact stories. There are millions that have come across in the last 10 years, 12 years, but this is one that stays with me forever. A parent who says that I realize that I've started smiling more, I'm a happier person, and I've gotten back to what I used to love doing. I never ever had the mind space to do it, but I'm doing it now. So that's Aatman Academy.
I think, as you mentioned, I myself could feel the goosebumps actually. Over to you, Bharathy.
Yeah, I'm literally shaking here, sitting here, hearing this personal story. And as my mind goes back to the story that I have, I'll introduce myself. I'm the founder and managing trustee of KSHAMATA. And we work with extremely vulnerable women, including women who are survivors of gender-based violence, trafficking, abuse, neglect, etc. I will come to what we do later, but I will share my story first because it's all interconnected. I remember I've done my master's in social work, and I remember working in a place in a brothel area it was almost 20 years ago, and I was working on HIV/AIDS. So there was no agenda on rehabilitation and things like that. I was teaching the women just to engage with them, some basic functional literacy. And one of the women from the group, when I was leaving this particular organization, which I will not name right now, she came and told me, "Didi, mujhe nikalna hai." And I'm like, I have just started work. I'm a young professional, working in a brothel area on HIV/AIDS. Now, what can I offer this young woman? She said, "Mujhe nikalna hai," and I left that organization, and that interaction with her never left me. It just kept coming back, and I was literally upset, and that I couldn't help her. I joined another organization. I spoke to the director and I said, "Can you please help me?" And I'm sharing this in all confidentiality. Okay, this girl, this young woman wants help, and I simply can't help her. Can you please help her? And he said, "Okay, I'll give her a job. Why don't you ask her to come out of the brothel area?" And I remember that very same evening, I was so excited. I called up this lady, and I told her, "This is what is available. Would you like to, take the? It's like a scary step forward, and I'm with you. So whatever help you need, I will support you." And this was all on a personal capacity. It was nothing related to work per se at that time. Yeah. And she came out. It was very difficult to find a place to stay for single women at that time. You had to stand as a guarantor, and there was a lot of problems. There were too many challenges, but we stuck through. She stuck through, and thank God for that. We went on. There was a whole journey together. And I remember one day after a few years, she comes back and says, "Didi, aaj mere ghar pe log aaye." I invited guests at home, and that really I had good goosebumps. Like, now, okay, this is integration, because in the brothel area you can't call your guests home, because what will you show them? And this kind of really stirred my heart, and I said, okay, if I can alone, pooling my own friends and resources and money, can help somebody who wants to start a new life, who wants to get out of exploitation, so why not a group of people come together, and we can do a lot more together, because there'll be more brains, there'll be more resources, there'll be more vision in this. So I think you got the drift. So I started KSHAMATA, and I was working full time also, but I initiated the process, and the vision being that women in exploitation are able to have options and choices, and they are able to start a new life journey where they will be able to heal themselves, equip themselves, get trained, get a job, and start deciding a life for themselves. I think that's where and I saw the evidence of it way back 2 decades back. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Bharathy. And I think what sort of caught my attention when you were actually speaking, and when I saw your website also, you don't look at them as beneficiaries, you look at them as stakeholders.
Yeah.
And that's something that's very interesting. Over to you, Joy, Sunayana.
Yeah. What can I say after listening to two inspiring women leaders? I think fantastic stories and fantastic work, and kudos to both of you. Thanks, Prabhakar, for holding this space so well and bringing the mosaic concept into the whole practice of coaching, which we will be talking later. I thought, like, okay, let me share the story of how this whole organization started. I think the community where I lived, it was a very diverse community, and what I experienced, or what I saw happening in the community, was the poorer people were marginalized, especially when it came to education. I could see caste discrimination, I could see class discrimination, I could see all forms of discrimination which existed in this little colony where I lived as I was growing as a child. Now, I stood up and I said, this discrimination shouldn't be there. And as all of us know, even till today, any social forces to stand up and walk against is not an easy affair. But and in my growing up years, I could see that in my own little ways, I was challenging all those social forces which was pushing me back. But what at the end of it, what I realized is that there is so much of there was a calling for me. I think the calling was, how do I not stay as a victim of getting marginalized, but how do I stand up and really prove the other wrong, saying that everything is possible. And just because you're poor, or just because you are from a different caste or a lower caste, it doesn't mean you are nothing. That whole thing stayed very strong in my gut and my heart. And I said, let me put my neck into the chopping block to prove the world different. And so I said, let me first become the role model, to role model how education denied for the oppressed community can become a way forward for many more children who can really transform into the knowledge world. And I think that's where my whole core purpose started. I became the first person who could get qualified as a graduate and a postgraduate and a behavioral science trainer, an international leadership trainer in my community, in my family background. So I said, if that is possible for a woman from a background like this, it should be possible for many more from the oppressed community. And what I saw was how the education is denied for a particular community over decades and over generations. Like Prabhakar, you mentioned that when you ask children, like, why not science? The oppressed children don't take science as their favorite subject. It's not only because of the learning, opportunities are unavailable to them. It's also because they feel fearful of owning the knowledge in the science area. If you look at the generations together, where marginalized has to get educated, what is told to them is take arts, take BCom. But science is never told to them because they feel that they are not adequate or capable or competent enough to be in that area. That's because if you look back, there are generations of people who are not really educated in the oppressed community. There are no role models back in their own homes. Therefore, it becomes difficult for them to even fathom the idea that I can really get educated, and they feel so inadequate inside. So for me, the whole purpose of starting Makkala Jagriti was, how can I help every child from the oppressed community to stand up and say, I have the potential insight, can I discover the light within for myself? And that's how the whole journey started. So Makkala Jagriti is working in the space of education for children and the youth. And we are working across Karnataka, reaching to 30,000 children a day, where children are finding and owning and saying, right to education is my right. So that's the impact Makkala Jagriti is making. And one example I would like to quote quickly. One of our we started a learning center model. It's one of the models we used is to create a holistic development learning center in a slum, so that children can come to learn without fear, without threat, without judgment, without evaluation, blah, blah, all that. So the children felt more confident that education is not fearful way of learning, it's more joyful way of learning. And so one of the boys who came from almost like a Dharavi slum, in Bangalore, there is a slum, very difficult slum, very children were getting all messed up because of the total environment they were growing up. So this guy who came to our center, he was so, like his ability to learn, his ability to pick up things was so fantastic. Through our, life skills, through our leadership program that we were conducting on an experiential methodology model, this guy was showing great ability to really facilitate sessions. So I went to one of our donors who supported this learning center first time. And I told, can some of your employees and the director come and engage with our children in our center and see what the impact these children are making because you are supporting them. And so the 5 people from their organization and 5, 6 or 7 youth, adolescent children from our center together did a project of looking at 10 years journey of Makkala Jagriti, how the Makkala Jagriti has, creating a history of Makkala Jagriti. And so there was collaboration between a stakeholder of a donor and the collaboration from the children who are benefiting through this the process. We're able to really show an impact to the organization, to themselves, what has changed for them. Instead of me going and telling as a founder, okay, we have done all this and this is the impact. But the donors themselves could really figure out what is the impact. So this guy and the team goes to the corporate organization. I said, you have to go present now this impact story to all the people in this corporate organization. So we took the team of 7, 8 adolescent youth, girls and boys, and they go, and all the directors, managers, techs, everybody come into this conference room to listen to this team of students who are going to present the impact story to everybody. And the first thing this guy tells them, I would like all of you to please stand up. And the directors, everybody's looking at each other's thing. And they said, okay, we'll stand up. Then he says, in Makkala Jagriti, what we do is, before starting anything, we would like to know if your presence is here fully present. Otherwise, we will not be able to start a session. Anyway, then they present the whole thing, and the whole team is like very impressed with. And in between, they lost their language. They were saying it in English, they forgot, they switched to Tamil, they switched to Kannada. But then they were able to really stand up with confidence and say what they wanted to say. At the end of the session, the director says, I wish we had sessions like this to feel very confident, like the way you guys are able to stand up and talk. And that is the impact. So more stories, but I'm just saying that this is a reason. How do you create role models in the oppressed communities? One of the core purpose of Makkala Jagriti. Yeah. Thank you.
Sunayana, anything you would like to quickly add in?
Yeah, just I think so. I've been with Makkala Jagriti for the past 6 years, and now currently I'm leading the organization as the chief functionary. I think, like Joy said, the core belief of Makkala Jagriti is that every child, every youth, every teacher, parent has their own potential, and all we need to do is just nudge, just facilitate to unravel that. And there have been so many stories of children realizing their potential. We've had a student who's who was really disinterested in pursuing higher education, but he found his path in Taekwondo, and he went on to represent India and won a bronze medal for India in the World Taekwondo Championship. Murli. We've had Mercy, who was really interested to pursue her education. She's now a bank manager in a reputed bank. Similarly, with teachers, with the Anganwadi workers that we associate with, parents we associate with, I think the belief is that each of them has that innate strength and potential. And typically working with teachers and parents, you don't see that. You see a lot of talking down to them, or going from a position of authority saying be this way or be that way. But what I have learned since the time I've been here is how we can sort of walk with them and help them unravel their own strength, their own motivation. And we've seen transformation in teachers who were earlier really not motivated to do what they do, to becoming star or role model teachers for the others. So I think that is a kind of similarity I would see between the philosophy of coaching and Makkala Jagriti, that our approach with all stakeholders, with the children and with our staff even, is discover the light within yourself. Yeah.
Fantastic, man. Such amazing stories. And normally one would have sort of, this part would have been just an introduction, but I think this was a learning session by itself, just listening to stories. What otherwise I would have probably done towards the end of the session to distill learnings. I think learnings have been so invaluable, I would rather do it at this stage itself in phase 1. And what I see, a common pattern, and you will notice that they all fit into one particular starting letter per se. I think the first I noticed all of you talking of is there are challenges around all of us, but how do you take it up as a challenge for yourself? I think that's one that I noticed. How do you convert challenges to a challenge for yourself? The second that I noticed was that not getting caught on circle of concern, but moving to a circle of influence. Many of us actually go through this concern, feel bad, sympathy, all sorts of feelings, but it doesn't get triggered into a strong action. So that converting the circle of concern to circle of influence. The next thing that I see is a conviction to make a difference. And in that conviction, all of you have found a calling for yourself. All your stakeholders to that calling. That's something amazing. The last one that I noticed is not last, for last but second. Some of us who have studied chemistry, etc., we know the power of catalysis. I think either we acted as catalysts or somebody else acted as a catalyst, and then the whole steps started moving forward. And the last thing, which I think is very, very important, how does this all translate into something which is common to all work that is being done by all of you, is creating a space that is comfortable, safe, conducive. And I think all of us who are involved with the social sector in some way or the other are creating the spaces for things to blossom and nurture. And thank you again for sharing those stories and helping us pick up some insights from that stories. We'll now move to the how of it, so to say. We have heard the what of it, and I think the audience would be keen to know the how of it. And very interestingly, each one of you have suggested one critical partner or collaborator or stakeholder in your journey. And I'm sure at the end of it, we will sort of again see there is some commonality of patterns in the how part of it. So maybe I'll start with Manjushree, and I think somewhere you mentioned 50% belongs to parents. And obviously they are a very, very critical collaborator and partner in your journey. If you could share, how have you gone about aligning them? Because again, parents, it's a very, very diverse group. They'll all come with different mindsets, feelings, etc. How do you sort of align them into your larger purpose?
So one of the very first things that I think we do as an organization, and we are really a social sector organization because we do cater to the needs of a wider plethora of learners. They be social economical status notwithstanding. I mean, kids cannot afford us. We are absolutely okay with it. We have all of them coming in. Our doors are open to anybody who would like to partake of our learning style. So one of the first things probably I can say, Prabhakar, is that there has been utmost honesty in what we can and cannot do. So as our parents come and get to know what our program is all about, we tell them in complete honesty whether, rather we are matching their expectations with us, and we are letting them know for sure that this is where our Lakshman Rekha is. This is a point up to which we can, and beyond this probably we cannot, and we are sorry about it. Maybe we are not competent, we do not have the wherewithal, we do not have the bandwidth. So the factor that has made our parents stick by us is absolute pure transparency and honesty about what we do, what we can do, what we cannot do. Taking this whole concept of honesty forward, after the child is with us also, we may have hit certain roadblocks with the child. So we again get the parents into our trust circle and say, okay, we don't know what to do this point forward. Please help us. You tell us. We are not saying we have all the answers all the time. Your child doesn't come to us, neither has the child come to you with a handbook. We need to know how to go this point forward. And while I was thinking through what coaching would be, I'm one person who loves to create acronyms. So I was just thinking today, a coach will be someone, I would look at a coach would be someone who can offer a confident hand and a caring heart. COACH. That brings out the language teacher in me also. But COACH would be, that is what we are doing at Aatman Academy. We are telling them we will do our very best. We are not mincing words. We are not, and so therefore, many a times when you look at schools, and I like I said, I used to be the principal of a Cambridge International School. And one of the reasons for me not wanting to stay around there was the fact that it was looking like more of a business. And we never looked at parents as people who we should appease and please because they are the ones who are finally paying the fees. No, sorry. None of that happening. Whether they pay the fees or not, they are our partners in raising the child for whatever number of years the child is with us. So right now, that is the top of my mind. So we are an organization who can offer a caring heart and a confident hand, and of course a creative mind, because that's what coaching, the definition of coaching uses the word creative solutions. So that I would probably see as the connect here.
Thanks, Manjushree, but very interesting acronym that you have used. And somewhere I also sort of have the habit of creating acronyms or looking at some patterns. Bharathy, coming to your area of work and having known few other friends who work in the same space, you have a very different challenge. There's so many stigmas associated with it, and unlike many other areas where it's relatively easy, I'm seeing. How have you gone about identifying collaborators and aligning them to your cause? And any one segment or two which you think is very, very critical?
Yeah, it's a story that can start and never stop. So it's difficult to know where to start from. But just to be clear that basically our stakeholders are the women and adolescent girls that we work with. They are our primary stakeholders. And the dream and the vision has always been कि आगे क्षमता ये औरतें ही चलाएगी, मैं नहीं चलाऊंगी. I am still an outsider, and I should recognize that. I have an expiry date. I should recognize that as well. So, yeah. So with the women, it's very difficult and challenging. Why? Because they have lost trust in the system. They have lost trust in people. I mean, you start with a negative. You don't even start at ground zero. You start below that. So I think that's where the challenge all started. And then sometimes, as a person who started an organization, wonder, why am I fighting a losing battle, or am I going to be losing? So I think these are the thoughts that you start with. But definitely, when you see lives change one by one, you are encouraged. So that's the positive part of it. With the women, it is more like a fatalistic attitude. दीदी हमको इधर ही रहना है, या हमको ये हमारी किस्मत में यही है, हम यही करेंगे, because अभी हम और क्या कर सकते हैं. There is, in their heart, there is a desire to start a new life, to do something, but they are so bogged down by, oh, कौन क्या कहेगा, society has rejected us, हम लोग. Now this is with any survivor person who has gone through violence, and I'm not just categorizing people here or women here. Okay, so there is a self-efficacy issue that we are. It's like when you go to battle, and you know who your enemies are. Like, our enemies is lack of self-efficacy. Our enemy is lack of confidence, lack of dignity. These are my enemies. And this is where I'm fighting the battle, where the team, so again, the stakeholders also include people who are involved in this work, because they are fighting the battle as much. And this kind of hit head on early that the fatalistic attitude. And we had to work our ways around to build that trust with the women and adolescent girls. Ki nahi, hum log hai. We are not running away. We are there with you. We may not be perfect. We may not be, glamorous. We may not solve every solution in this world, have every solution to the problem, but we are there. We will try our best. So I think that helped us begin Shamata initially. And you are constantly trying to prove yourself that you're there, you're not running away. And I mean, it's like you don't know where the money is coming from, but you're still there type of situation. And secondly, what the challenges that we realized, when you know that you're an outsider, you instill leadership and confidence within your stakeholders so they can take the work ahead. So we talk about peer leaders, we talk about peer educators. We can romanticize these words because it's very easy to say that peer leadership, and it's very difficult to come by. You have to really work hard on it. And yes, they become our the leaders for the future generation for this work actually. The third thing that we were very clear from the beginning is that we are not here to fix you. So because when you go with a fixing mentality, you actually divide the entire, the way the connection is already gone. Because here you're trying to fix. And I have seen in my many years of work that some organizations I worked in, they come here to save you and fix you, and then as if we are like, so the moment you say I'm here to fix you, I say that you don't have value. And that's not the good premises to begin with in any relationship when you're doing this kind of work. The fourth thing that we were very clear from the beginning, this is going to be person-centric. Because the moment you start clubbing people and categorizing people and, so it has to be a person-centric approach. It has to be individual. It has to be participative. It has to be facilitative. You're not here to provide solutions and fix problems. You're here to facilitate and enable people. Very big words, very difficult to put on ground. It's very difficult, but you have to make that sacrifice or go the extra mile to do this. We learned this the hard way. So these are the few things that we started with, and we want to keep these running and real, till the end.
Thanks, Bharathy. And I think, means very difficult to sort of bring out the actual challenges when we go about doing it. It's very easy to talk about it. And I think the best way to really appreciate would be is people actually shadowing us when we are actually on the ground. Seeing it in action really brings out those learnings actually.
And can I add one more thing, sir? If that's okay?
Yes, Bharathy. Yeah.
I think another thing that I'm so petrified is, am I a role model? Because you can speak about empowerment, you can speak about liberty and all those things, but if you do not live it in your life, because with women in our country, if you are a single woman, I've been single till this May. I've been single, and you have to know what you're there for. I think very important as a person who's leading, and along with the staff and the team, is that if you can't role model, you can't, because you sacrifice when you role model. There is a sacrifice associated. Role modeling doesn't come free of cost. So if you are not willing to make that sacrifice, then I think we should not get into this at all. So I think because women are watching, your stakeholders are watching. They may not tell you anything, but they are definitely watching.
Thanks, Bharathy. Joy, Bharathy made a passing reference to expiry date.
Yes.
Typically, like corporates, when you started into such meaningful work, it's equally important that our institution outlives us.
Yes.
So that the work continues.
Yeah.
And I hear that you've been approaching it in a very, very conscious manner. Yeah. And to that extent, internal leadership is a very important stakeholder or collaborator for you.
Yeah.
So if you could share what made you think to sort of create a leadership pipeline? Because it's not an easy thought to let go.
Yes.
And how have you gone about doing it?
Thank you. Yet again, both Bharathy and Manjushree, the more we are coming to listen to each other, the more we are also learning how inspiring work everybody is doing. Thank you for that valuable sharing. And so like what Prabhakar you said, how can a concern get translated into a circle of influence? For me, while the concern was true from my own personal experience, then I was looking at how do I convert this into a collective concern and collective influence, and trusting that beyond me there are many who can also be as passionate as I am, So towards this thinking, like I may not have been so clear in my thinking when I was started this organization about 19 years back. But one thing I was clear about it, how do I bring different stakeholders to hold this purpose together, and really like what you said, how can we get coached by stakeholders? That was the model I initiated first. So once the organization was started, within 3 years, once that little EGPG of the earlier settling of the organizations, the teething is settling down, I said there has to be a collective shared visioning of the organization. So we invited 8 different segment of stakeholders. And the first stakeholder was the children and the youth who were coming to our centers. And we asked them, if you want to see this organization flourish in the future, what is the name you want to give for this little conference that we want to have, a 3-day conference towards this shared visioning? Would you like to give a name to it? And the children thought about it through a consensus building, and they came out with the name Makkala Jagriti Sundara Darshana, meaning Makkala Jagriti's beautiful vision. Darshana means darshan. So that's a name which was instilled as part of the shared visioning model. So there were 8 segment stakeholders: children, teachers, donors, NGO partners, corporate sponsors, and well-wishers. Everybody came together. About 60 odd people came. We spent 3 days using a future search methodology to really come out with a shared visioning of the organization. So the collective empowering models, I would say, started there. It was not so much about joy. It was more about how can Makkala Jagriti can become a collective, purpose-driven as a social movement. So our whole mission and vision is based on the social movement of a collective thinking. That was the first platform that I laid for the organization. And the disempowerment has to happen from there, right? One is it too easy to say, like what Bharathy is saying, how do you translate it into action? Now, I think from the beginning, the organization was run by mostly from people from the urban slum background. So they were one of the key stakeholders in running the organization, running those centers, doing facilitation and all that. So the capacity building started for them from there, and then they all grew up to a level of anchors, coordinators and managers, so that you can see the empowerment happen through that model. Now, throughout that, keeping in mind our whole tagline, Discover the Light Within, was applied at every level in all this stuff, so that maybe today we call it as coaching, but perhaps what we experimented was that back then, where each of the staff were given the opportunity to grow within the organization, to go beyond what they think that they can do. How can they really tap into their own potential to play their role more effectively than what they felt that they can play, because they were coming also with certain reservations or inadequacy or feeling, they were not even confident if they can take up such big roles in the organization. So the platform was, for me, was the first thinking I brought into the organization. How can I develop a team which can take the purpose of this organization with an intensity and with the passion for which it was for which it was started. But they might do it in their own style, they might do it in their own ways, but they will have to get the pulse of how this organization has to move forward. So integrating such thought processes as a culture, as a founder trusting that they can do it in their own way and their own styles, yet the purpose can be met, was one of the stronger foundation, I must say. So then it grew into, as early as when the organization was even 8 years or 9 years, I had to travel to the US or whatever, two, 3 times. But I called all our coordinators who are still nascent in their roles. They didn't even know what organization is. I told them, now you are going to run this organization for 2 months. I'm not going to be there. So when I came back, it was a great surprise. They ran it much better than what I could have done. So that is another testing of the pudding for a founder, to say that how do you really trust your team and not get into this anxiety or dilemma, what will happen to my organization when I'm not there? That is another empowering model that I have experimented. And it's not easy, but you have to really believe in yourself that somebody else can do it, maybe better than you or equally good like you. So that is another way for any founder to really feel confident about it and not get anxious about it. So since this was the a culture which got integrated from the beginning, it became sort of easier for me as a founder and also for the trustees along with me, because we all came from a very similar thinking in that way. The other 2 trustees with me, they also believe that how can we really build capacity within the organization to move forward. And that was helpful for me because that whole language, the culture, that integration, everything. So we experimented many ways to bring leadership development within the organization at all levels. So most of our monthly review meetings will be run by all level people. It's not only the managers who came and ran the review meetings. It was the facilitators who are working at the ground level with children, came back to the monthly review and said, we will run the meeting so that we are now influencing the system thinking from their angle. So I think consciously bringing organizational development system thinking from all level was also helpful in building the organization through this. So later years, we did experiment with 1 or 2 people who could come and take the executive director role in the organization. We have had some good experience, some bad experience, but eventually we found a person. So the last 5 years, we consciously brought coaching as one of the interventions in the organization by engaging external coaches to coach our internal executive team. So apart from me or the trustees, but we also invited many coaches who could come and engage so that the leadership team feels confident that they can grow and we are not over hovering on them all the time. They might, we might say we are an open founder, I'm an open managing trustee, I can be friendly with you. But I'm sure when an external coach comes, they will feel more confident and feel good about, even if they want to crib about me, they should be able to crib about me, right? And you need to trust that they should crib about me. So I think giving that kind of space for people to feel confident and trust oneself and trust the founder to be supportive, all that matters very much in the organization. In the last 4-5 years, we consciously brought these external coaches to coach our top leadership, middle leadership, and we also experimented with peer coaching model where the coordinators could do peer coaching amongst themselves. So different forms we have brought in. And I'm glad today I'm not sitting alone on this screen. I'm already sitting with a person who's already leading the organization. I'm only extra fitting here. So Sunayana is the leader of the organization. I have nothing to do with this organization on a day-to-day basis. I only come to give a little bit of talk here and there. But she has really brought in the required tenacity to hold the role and to take the organization purpose for what it was initiated. And I'm going to give it over to Sunayana to share how she has been groomed to move away, to take this organization forward. And I'm distancing as a founder from the organization. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Joy. And I think you're actually demonstrating what
Yes.
Bharathy said, role modeling. You're actually demonstrating live, so to say. And yeah, Sunayana, thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much, Joy, for sharing that.
And
So
Sunayana,
I
what
joined.
may I request?
Sure.
Also, when you could also sort of, for the benefit of the audience, you were also in the corporate sector for some time. And
Yeah.
maybe if you can very briefly touch upon what prompted you to move into this sector. And then, of course, your experience with Makkala Jagriti.
Yeah. So I, by education, I'm an engineer and I did my MBA in HR. So I worked for several years in the corporate, first as a software consultant and then as a HR professional. About 8 to 9 years ago, some kind of dissatisfaction set in where I realized I'm not feeling happy every day. I'm not, feeling that sense of satisfaction. Up until then, I was really enjoying my job. So I found this, a rural development fellowship where I went on to a tribal village in Orissa. Was there for a year, there working with children in a tribal residential school. I came back to Bangalore and I was looking for organizations that specifically worked with children from the marginalized communities. Those who were going to government schools or those who were, really marginalized either socially or economically. And that's when I came across Makkala Jagriti, right? Just to share how I decided to continue in the sector when I was joining the fellowship, I said, it's just 1 year, let me see. If not, I could always fall back on my corporate job. But the day I started working in the school, I think within 2-3 days, I'm like, wow, you can be happy every day. This is a thing that your, work can make you happy and you can feel such joy from, from your work on a daily basis. So I didn't take a year to decide. I think within a week of the fellowship, I was like, okay, I'm going back to Bangalore and figuring out something to do in this space where I can feel good about myself. I don't think it's a very selfless thing or a very big deal. I think it's very selfish. I want to feel good. What I'm doing every day is something that's bringing me joy, something that I find meaningful, or something that gives me gratification. I think that was the trigger for me to decide this is the path I want to choose. And somehow I came across Makkala Jagriti. It was not very easy to come across Makkala Jagriti because Joy has always been somebody who's been very quiet about the work. So there's not, much on the branding or communications part. Now, of course, we're trying to change that. And I think the day I met her, I came for a casual chat. There was a review meeting going on and she said, you please join the meeting. I was like, okay, what is this model? I've just come to, sort of interview or understand what's happening. And this person is asking me to be part of some meeting. And, just started off like that. I volunteered for a while because I still had my inhibitions. What do nonprofits do? How do they function? Is this a good space? Because you hear so many things and stories. And I volunteered for a couple of months and joined as a program manager. So from program manager, I grew to be a program director, handling many programs, and now I'm leading the organization as a chief functionary. The journey has been very, very empowering. For the first time in my life, I experienced, I think, that sense of freedom to do things the way I wanted to do. So whatever I got from Joy or from the board, a lot of support and guidance, but a lot of freedom with responsibility. I think that culture really kind of inspired me, and I am trying to do that with my team, and they in turn. So at every level, there is that sense of empowerment. Plus, there is regular feedback, continuous feedback, mentoring. Like you were mentioning earlier, asking the right questions. We believe that we are a reflective organization. We want people to be, very self-aware, reflect about themselves, look at our own work very critically and not be satisfied saying everything is hunky-dory, everything is going great. I think that culture of being open, being very, facilitative, very non-threatening and non-judgmental also, I would say, where, you don't feel threatened. Can I say this? Can I do this? Can I be myself? I think those are things which I saw right from the time I joined. And my job was easy, just to carry it forward. I didn't have to set that as such, but it was already coming. And I think that foundation also has helped us grow. When I joined, we were about 20, 25 people. Today, we are an organization of 130 people. So I think the foundation was so solid that, it became very easy to kind of take that journey forward, where you just had to ensure it continues. And of course, bringing newness in terms of the work, the programs. We were one program then, now we work in 4 very large programs where we work with Anganwadis, with schools, with communities, with youth, etc. That has happened because of a strong work culture and a strong sense of values, which was already set, I would say. And I also experienced coaching from external coaches, like Joy was saying. So not just having Joy as my mentor and some of the trustees as well, but we also, got people from outside the organization wherever it was necessary. For some of the managers, it was internal, where they felt more comfortable. For some, it was people from the outside. But all of this, has now become ingrained. It's become a way of life for us. I think that is what, and I can feel confident that, my next line of leadership can take the organization forward, because people ask, what is this? As soon as people join MJ, there is a sense of passion that automatically comes. So it's just ingrained, I think. It just rubs off on each other. And that is how. So I'm grateful, for having experienced and continuing to experience that kind of freedom with a very strong sense of responsibility to take things forward. And I'm sure it's not easy for Joy to, sort of let go and be. But I was thinking last night, we were catching about this, and it had been few weeks since I spoke to her. So that is a kind of, freedom and empowerment that I enjoy. So yeah, it's great to experience that.
If Prabhakar, if I may just hop in to resonate every word of what Joy has said, and I really want to, and I want to actually, connect this to one of the questions that I'm seeing asked over here by Mr. Emmanuel David, and he has spoken about the passion and purpose of a founder. When can that become overwhelming and counterproductive to an organization? And I want to really exactly what Joy has said is what I am right now going through. So as you are aware, I'm right now in the US as part of, I've been awarded the Fulbright Fellowship Program. And I want to tell you that I applied. The first set of people who I asked was not my mother-in-law and my husband, but my core team. I asked them permission. Can I apply for this? Because when I apply for this, I'm going to be scooting off for 4 months. And they were like, yeah, go ahead. You know why? I was confident that they would say yes, because we were already from the day one, and I so completely agree with Bharathy about this expiry date. I'm going to no longer be around. When I say that, people say, kya ho gaya? Kuch ho gaya aapko? Nee, nothing has happened to me. But that's reality, bhai. We're all not going to be there. Who's going to be running the school till you're 80 and 90? I'm planning to be off the radar. We need to have our next line all set up and doing their work. And I think that comes from what I'm seeing Joy speaking, and that is something that very, very strongly resonates. Is, you said it's not easy to let go. Let me tell you, Sunayana, I'm a founder and I am letting go. It's not my organization. It is not my organization. Today, it is being shaped up by every single person who's putting in so much investing. So my other partners, I won't just call them stakeholders, are my team members. And it all comes from ownership. I'm not sharing my organization with them. They own it. And the moment they own it, they start working towards its growth and progress and development. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to. And there is no question of micromanaging. I'm sitting here 9.5 hours away from my country. Things are happening and I come to know about it from the Facebook. I come to know about it from the social media. Somebody's going to attend workshops. Somebody is gone for some lovely march on 15th of August. Everybody's preparing. There's one fancy stuff happening all over. And I'm like, yay, superb. I'm sitting here and enjoying this journey in from like a CCTV camera. And it's lovely to be in this spot. I think that the most beautiful, the best thing for in a leadership role is nobody is missing you. That's such a beautiful place to be. Nobody is missing you. Things can go on without you, whether you're there or not. There, life goes on. Nothing is changing, and it's so beautiful to see that life is flourishing, not just going on. And I think God, He's also there but not there.
And Manjushree, can I take that forward, saying, okay, right now I'm sitting here in this panel, and right now I'm sitting here and chatting with you guys, and I have the team handling one of our key donors on ground. I am not there.
Absolutely.
Good. Very good.
There you are.
In fact,
that's the biggest compliment anybody can get,
Like what we say, how do you make yourself redundant? And yet work continues. And I think the fact that all of us are here in a way illustrates and demonstrates that. But again, if I were to sort of pick out insights and learnings, and as I said, Manjushree, I have a fixation of putting it into some letters or something. I find what all four of you have spoken, there are 5 consistent elements, which is actually helping you align with collaborators. I think the first one that I picked up was a critical one, I would say, this whole concept of trusteeship, which essentially means I have to create something which will benefit the future generation of stakeholders, partners, beneficiaries, your internal, keeping the future in mind, conceiving something today. That whole philosophy of trusteeship is very deeply ingrained. The second that I notice is the whole element of trust. The greater the trust, greater the alignment. And trust does not come easily. And it's equally difficult to sustain that trust. Years and years of work that has gone to building trust can just collapse with one act of indiscretion. So very often we think that trust once created is done and dusted. It's a daily, every minute activity. The third aspect that I picked up was the whole thing of transparency. If you are looking at alignment, you need to be transparent. And very often that's one of the toughest things to do.
True.
In a way, you are exposing yourself fully. You're disclosing all your cards. But unless you sort of do that, you cannot create that trust. The fourth element that I noticed from what all you're saying is, how do we look at all partners as one team? It is not we or they. We are in it together. And very often we make the mistake of looking at it as we, they, different silos, etc. But how do we look at it as one team per se? And the last one that I picked up was you need to have tenacity. Especially in a sector like this, you need to have tenacity to create alignment and sustain alignment. Thank you for giving such a powerful and impactful experiences. We are at around 20 minutes more. I'll just shift gears to, okay, till now we have heard of what have we done. I would now like to sort of spend next 10-15 minutes looking ahead. And what I would want you to sort of quickly share is, what are some of the challenges that you see in the next 3 years, 5 years? Because we also know the ecosystem is changing, whether it could be the role of social media, the role of digital technology. We are seeing the very, very rigid thought processes of society becoming more inclusive. And I'm not world across, you're seeing that there are a lot of divisive forces coming. So the whole ecosystem is also changing. So how would you go about dealing with some of these challenges in the next 4-5 years, especially with the prism of coaching? How do you see coaching helping you deal with emerging challenges? Manjushree, any thoughts?
Uh, Let me give it a little more thought, because I am really trying to put my finger on the challenges that we face, and whether I can actually preempt them right now. But yes, of course, social media and all is a very big challenge. Probably in our case, we have multiple learners, diverse learners. We have a lot of variability in our classrooms, and we are an inclusive setup in every way that we can call it that. And sometimes one of the challenges that we may face is because parents are a lot more informed nowadays. Expectations can be much higher than what their child's potential is. I'm not going to say the child delivers, and we are nobody to decide the child's potential. We always tell parents that, let your child come here and give us chance, give us time, yeah, and give us adequate time for us to discover your child. And we are not saying that we will be able to know everything about your child, but many a times parents are in a bit of a hurry. Ye bhi aana chahiye, wo bhi aana chahiye. Now that he's come to Aatman Academy, I have a magic wand and I can just do abracadabra and everything will be set right. And that is a bit of a challenge at times, because their expectations rise beyond, because we give such good positive feedback to the parent, which they've never received from any of the previous schools that they have been in, because we choose to see what's right in the child and not really focus on what's not a potential within the child, because we want to flourish what the child is best at. So that possibly may be one of the challenges, if I can put my finger on it, as right now,
Sure.
parental expectations, and setting them to, or calibrating them to ensure that they are realistic.
Sure. Bharti, any thoughts?
Yeah, a few thoughts that came to my mind. I think challenges will be there forever, and I mean, we will always face those challenges. But I think in the space that we work, uh, I think discouragement and disillusionment happens more often. And even as the ecosystem changes and things are getting more rigid, like you said, how things are changing, it is more discouraging for the people who work on ground. So I'm talking about our stakeholders as people who work on ground. And I think capacity building, again, we have to keep arming ourselves. We have to keep strengthening ourselves. I think that's where I see we can be very obsolete. We can get obsolete very fast in this generation. We have to keep upgrading ourselves. We have to say, okay, if this strategy doesn't work, what else can work? So I think listening to the clientele or our stakeholders on the women, and I think listening skills have to be improved because we are givers. We want to give. And ultimately what happens is that if there is no ownership from the other stakeholders, then, there is a disappointment, there's a disillusionment, these kind of, see, how much ever you tell people on ground, they are givers. You can't stop that. Yeah. But how do we balance that out for our own mental health and sanity is very important, because there's a professional boundary as well. I think strengthening that, I feel for us, we are a very small team. We are not as big as the others on the panel today. But I think arming ourselves, capacity building. I remember ICF had coached a few of our team members, and the last session, I remember people sharing. So we came together and shared our experience on coaching. And one of the sharing was that, oh, we felt so vulnerable. I didn't feel like opening up. Okay. So I think when vulnerability is, we show vulnerability, we become stronger. I think it's an antithesis for some weird reason. We become stronger, and we know that we are all in the same battle. And teamwork then becomes very important. Getting teams work together is a very, very. It's very easy to say it, not as easy to do it. Is a very important part of coming forward. What I see is the way things are changing is stronger teamwork, better capacities, upgrading ourselves, more participation, listening with the stakeholders that we are. Another thing that is working for us, because COVID pushed us to do even that more, is collaborations with external agencies, organizations. We are not here to be God. We are here to collaborate, and we are here to share the wins. It's a win-win situation, and with other people as well in the same space. I think working in a silo, in alone, in isolation, weakens us, and we have seen that. Okay, but collaborating with external agencies, and that's where we are going now, because it just adds strength to what you do as well, and it justifies working in this space, because you can't do everything for your stakeholders on ground or your clientele on ground. So these are the few things I feel. We are a small organization, so I'm talking a little more basic than maybe other solutions. But for us, it is moving on that, equipping our team. See, I feel coaching is something like you call for reinforcements when you're in battle. You call for reinforcements for strength. And that's what I realized through that process of coaching does. It kills shame. It kills, ambiguity. It brings your contradiction to light. It dispels that darkness, and it actually strengthens me. And that's what it did to our team at that time. So I think personally building so that we can use the same principles with our women and girls, adolescent girls, because the principles are the same. You can use it on ground for your stakeholders as well, and strengthen them too, or enable them too. So I think this in a smaller organization like us, I think this, and yeah, the last but not the least, educating our donors, because I think a lot of things are unsaid, and we think that they understand, and they think we understand. So I think more dialogue with donors, supporters is very important, I feel personally, because people think working on ground, I can show result in 6 months. No, I cannot. And I can't give you hundreds of numbers. That is also I cannot do. I'm not a superhuman being. Okay, we are a small team of people. We are not God together. So we can talk to our donors. We can speak to them, and I think coaching, mentoring, all these big words now, we do it in our small ways, actually need to be budgeted. I mean, if I don't have money to take time out, because my first fear was, okay, when ICF, we had to do coaching, अरे time कहाँ से आएगा? Mind space भी नहीं है. We are doing 2 people's job. We are understaffed. Like there has to be mind space. If you're taking something, you need to be having mind space for it. So I think these were the fears I had. This person will be busy for 2 hours now. Abhi wo kaam kon, like it's silly. It sounds very stupid. But these are the things that went through my mind when we started doing coaching. But I think what I saw towards the end, though it was 6 months, it was very encouraging to me, and I feel it should be longer term, not just 6 months.
Sunayana, maybe since you are now the future of Makkala Jagriti.
Thank you for saying that. If you ask me, I would have said she will answer it.
Absolutely. Why I know you too well.
Yeah, agree with what.
It's gone away. So much trust. It's gone away.
Yeah, I think like Bharathy was saying, the pandemic, really taught us so much. I mean, I don't think we faced any bigger challenge than that, where the whole world went upside down. But what kept us going, all of us realized that adversity pushes us to innovate. We realize that we are so resilient, we are so gritty. I think all of us, are coming out of it with so much learning. And from the coaching angle, I think what helped and what will help in the future is also, we can always do better and face anything when we're more self-aware, right? And I think we place so much importance for that in the organization. Recently, all my executive team members also, are going through the strengths journey. You have the Clifton Strengths Finder, right? So each of us are now coming from the place of, I understand my strengths, I understand these are my dominant strengths, these are my lesser strengths, so I collaborate with you. So I think that sense of awareness of what what am I good at as a person, then as a team what are our strengths, as an organization what are the strengths. If we're constantly reflecting on that, then I think facing any challenges and adversities that come across, we at least know, this is something we can attempt to do, this is something we could try, here is where we could innovate. And I think saying no is also a very big challenge for NGOs. It's not easy when something comes along that you say no. So I think this sense of awareness also helps us realize that, hey, we can say no. Bharathy was saying, the donor education part, I think that plays a role there also, saying these are the things which are not possible, or these are the things that we cannot do. And all this comes from having a strong sense of awareness of where we are, who we are, what are our strengths, and also I think an alignment to the core purpose. I think that helped us a lot during the pandemic not to deviate. Every time there was a something in front of us, you're like, okay, is this aligned to our purpose? Do we believe in this? So I think that also kind of helps. So I think revisiting that, what are our convictions, what is our purpose, and having an awareness of our own strengths is what I would see that coaching can bring, as in an organization or individual team members.
I think, I think come what may, principles is what will hold you, whether it's existing challenges or future challenges. As long as we are sort of knitted and driven by principles, I think we will find our way in terms of dealing with any challenges. And again, if I were to sort of reflect on your responses and sort of put into 5 bullet points, what I hear all of you saying is alignment to anchors. Each organization, each individual would have particular anchors. How do we sort of stay aligned to those anchors? How do you build interdependencies? I think increasingly interdependencies will increase. How do you sort of create and contemporize capacities? Like what Bharti said in terms of spending time, creating capacities for future, that becomes a third element. The whole aspect of dialoguing and listening. I think the evolving context is actually putting more and more emphasis on this aspect of dialoguing and listening. And last is really expectation management. Because as you succeed, expectations increase, both in terms of delivery, scale, scope. But the reality is all of us operate within certain constraints. So how do you sort of manage those expectations? I think this 4-5 principles would help any social sector deal with any of the challenges that they would face in future. We have very few minutes left. So I would probably request all of you to, there are 2 questions to this and quick 1-minute response. So we have 2 sets of audience. One is the social sector participants and other is a whole lot of coaches. What would be your message to the social sector participants who are here in terms of embracing coaching? And the second question is, what is your message to the coaches on what should they be, one aspect that they should be sensitive when they're working with social sector, unlike when they're working with corporate sector? So 2 elements to this question. Maybe we'll reverse and start with Sunayana.
I think for the social sector organizations, I think what Joy and I shared, about the success in our organization with coaching, I think it doesn't have to be formal coaching with coaches like Prabhakar shared in the beginning, but I think ensuring that there is some kind of formal or informal availability of either people from the outside or from the organization who are looking at people from the lens of their own self-growth and development, helping them unravel their potential. I think that unlocks a lot for the organization. If every person in the organization is performing to their potential, you'll have such a great, thriving organization. So I think I'm sure many organizations are doing it already, but those who aren't, I'm also happy to share offline, about how we went about it. For the coaches, I think a lot of questions can, first of all, coaching help non-profits? Can we collaborate? Please do, any non-profits of, we definitely welcome, expert coaches like you all to this space and to this world. I think there's a lot that can benefit us, and I'm sure a lot for you to learn as well. Yeah, I don't think I have any specific, things to share that do this differently. Yeah, Joy can share. Yeah.
Right?
Only one point I want to share to coaches when they come to social sector: to be mindful that coaching does not have any language. It's not about English, or it's not about all that. Coaching is a practice that can impact across anybody. Anybody who does not, who speaks in Kannada can be coached, who speaks Tamil can be coached, who don't know how to speak also can be coached. So I think being mindful of that hierarchy or that elitism that perhaps one can carry in the mind, or looking at social sector as a okay, we are now going to be this givers to the social sector to transform them into some jewels. I think those kind of mindset or myths or some kind of perception, if you carry, then it will not have the impact that you're seeking when you go to coach people from social sector. I would really request all of you to go with the mindset, hey, I'm going to now be interacting and engaging with this person from this organization like yet another any other person I would do in the world. So I would like you to be mindful, because people means everybody has the same feeling, everybody's emotions are the same. There's no language to it, there's no hierarchy to it, there's no elitism in it. Thank you.
Quick thoughts, Bharathy?
Yeah, for the coaches, I think what I would recommend or suggest would be understand the context, because the world that you come from is very different, and the world of the NGO is super different. And I think finding that the bridge, that's a discovery that you have to make, and that is hard work. It's not going to come easy. So a word of caution to coaches who are dealing with NGO people: it's not going to be easy because the bridge has to be built before any of the uptake of coaching can happen. That's my personal experience as well, and what I have heard. So understand the context, and maybe some unlearning has to be done for that as well. So that's one. That's my point. For the people from the social sector, my appeal would be is that if we want to develop second line leadership, and if we truly want the legacy to go on, I think considering coaching as one of the key tools would be a wise decision today, because the world is changing, like we discussed, and things are rapidly going around us, and life is finite. So that is it's my personal belief that second line leadership would benefit, and not just second line leadership, the people on ground. I hate to use the word beneficiary, so I'll still call them stakeholders, and they are our clientele. If our people working on the ground, if our cohort doesn't develop those principles of coaching, I mean, our stakeholders on ground will miss out on the benefits of that. So that's my opinion.
Yes, Manjushree, last word.
Yeah, so for the social sector people, if I had to start, I love, my favorite example is that if my bindi is crooked, it's here. And if somebody is telling me it's crooked, I got to listen, right? Because it's going to make me look beautiful. Because if this is here, obviously I'm the one who's looking crazy. So I think for all of us who are in this space, I think once there's a coach in the picture, then surrender. Look it in the eye, because there is a mirror that we see ourselves in, and sometimes we don't see what we need to see. So coaching helps us see that. It helps us see those blind spots that we were never aware of. So I know, because Sunayana mentioned StrengthsFinder, and for the last 5 years we have been we are being coached as an organization by a person who's a StrengthsFinder coach. So look it in the eye and surrender. That's something I would say for all of us as social sector people. When you have a coach in the picture, consider them as the guru, and be ready to listen to whatever. You may take some, you may leave some, that's okay. For coaches, I really love what Bharathy and Joy and Sunayana shared. I think those are very pertinent points. I'm reminded right now of a training session during my Acumen Fellowship program, and this was by the Cambridge Leadership program. There was something called Adaptive Leadership that we did up with you, and he was a 70+ person who gave us so many insights. And one of the things I took from him we all took from him was this statement called "push it on them." So I just believe as coaches, we need to understand that there is no one size fits all, and understanding the context, like Bharathy very rightly said, is the key to a good coach. Being able to understand where you're coming from, and I may not know that context, I may not know what you are speaking about, and I just need to push it on you and help you find those solutions by probably what you also very rightly said, Prabhakar, by just being a catalyst there, just being there, but kind of disappearing when you're not needed to be there. So maybe being a good listener and being available to the space like you are, that's, I think, what I'm nobody to say what a coach should do and should not do, but I just think that's one thing that we have experienced from our coach. We really got a very good insight from there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manjushree. Thank you, Bharati. Thank you, Joy, Sunayana. It was a pleasure engaging with all of you. And as Ambika comes onto the stage, I would only like to sort of summarize by something which Joy alluded to. To me, coaching is a universal language. It's a universal language of change and learning. It's a universal language of change and learning to create magical stories. And I think in the last 90 minutes, we have actually heard how those stories have got created. And with your permission, Abhirambika, just 30 seconds, I just would like to end with a short story. Some of you would have heard this story. It's a story of Sound of the Forest. It's about a king, Saul, who sends his son, Prince Tai, to the temple. And there's a master, a guru called Panku. And the king is looking at Prince Tai as a successor. And therefore, he wants Panku to teach him the basics of leadership. So the guru is actually in a forest called Mingli. Panku goes to the Mingli forest. And all that the guru says is, go and spend time in the forest and come back after 1 year and describe me what is the sound of the forest. So he returns back, all excited, thinking he has learned everything. And the guru asks him, describe what did you hear? He says, Master, I could hear the cuckoos sing, the leaves rustle, the hummingbirds hum, the cricketers chirp, the grass blow, the bees buzz, and the wind whisper and holler. Prince finishes thinking that he has got the certificate. Master says, go back to the forest. What more can you hear? He was very puzzled, angry, but then he had no other option. He went back. Days and nights, he kept sort of listening, sat alone. Initially, he couldn't hear anything beyond what he had already heard. Then suddenly one day, he started to hear those very, very discerning, faint sounds, which he had never heard before. The more accurately he listened, the more actively he listened, the sounds became more clearer. And suddenly that bulb clicked. He says, this is what probably the master wanted me to learn and discern. Comes back, and this time when the master asks him, what did you hear? He says, I could hear the unheard, the sound of the flowers opening, the sound of the sun warming the earth, the sound of the grass drinking the morning dew. The master said, when you can hear the unheard, you probably can embark on your journey of growth and future. With that, over to you, Abhirambika.
Thank you so much. So that was a perfect fitting end to a great conversation. In fact, this is a 90-minute conversation, and we didn't feel that we've actually crossed 90 minutes. That was what I was feeling as I was listening to all of you. And I would like to thank you, in two parts. One is, first of all, thank you for the work that you're all doing, right? It's not easy in each of the roles, what you're playing, and, moving from corporate. I have moved from corporate sector to coaching sector. I would still say I'm a long way, into moving into something that's, touching as what you're all doing. So the next thing is what I want to thank you all to spare your time, be here with all of us and share the insights, because what we have learned from this session is phenomenal, both from the coaching perspective. How can coaches, support this development sector? And also, people who are in the development sector, there are lots of questions, I think, which all got beautifully answered through your experience. So thank you so much for all of you. I am having goosebumps after listening to you all. I'm sure the audience, the rest of them, would have had a similar experience. So thank you once again.
Thank you, ICF, for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.